All right.
Hi, Cameron.
Hello, Corinne. Where are we going today?
I think I'm gonna let you start today if you're up for it.
Yeah, I actually, the thing that's really on my mind right now is, well, I guess I'll give a little bit of backstory. So we just got back from Florida, traveling down there for a couple of weeks, and um, the first week was really hard. My daughter was just not into it. And I realized eventually that she thought that we were moving there. So she was really kind of freaked out. I didn't tell her we were just
Oh,
going
wow.
on vacation. She didn't like understand that.
Oh, wow.
She just knew that we were going to live in a tent, which is a totally reasonable thing to expect from us, is that we might live in a tent. So anyway, so she was having a hard
Oh,
time. And then I was having a really hard time and couldn't figure out why. And so I listened to this talk. I don't remember who it was by, but it was somebody with the Self Realization Fellowship, one of the monks there. And it was like the title of the talk was something like how to deal with hard times or something like that. So
mm,
it appealed to me. And the thing that I got out of that talk that has been sitting with me for the last couple of weeks is that every experience that we have is either pushing us towards God or pulling us towards God. And so this is like the
that's
theme that we are
interesting.
talking about all the time. We're like, God always wins. We're
Mm,
always going back to this, like, God wins in the end. It doesn't really matter how much evil there is in the world, God wins. And so just having that, I've been using that phrase as a kind of point of contact since then. When I'm encountering any situation, not even just a difficult situation, I in the middle of it, I'll kind of ask myself, how is this pulling me towards God or pushing me towards God? And obviously, the pulling, or this may be obvious to some people, but I'll explain it. The pulling towards God is feelings like bliss or good times. Like, yes, you just want to run to God. Like, this is it. Like
mm,
being out in nature, this is God. Like, that is pulling you. And the pushing you is the bad experiences, the really hard times that are like, get away from that and run towards God. And this is what I love about yoga, or at least this yogic lineage and all the yogic lineages that I've studied, is that when I was growing up, my mom would do this thing where if we were in a fight, she would be, and I would want to leave because we're in a fight and I didn't want it to escalate. I would want to leave. And she would do this thing where she would be like, oh, yeah, you coward, go ahead and run away, da da da, da, and all this stuff or whatever. And it would make me so mad because I thought I'm being rational here by leaving this situation until I can, like you're being irrational. So the thing about yoga is that that's the whole thing. Their whole thing is run away from it. If you see something that disturbs you, that's called asat. That's the things that pull you away from peace. And so you need to run towards the sat, which is the savior, God, guru, anything that makes you feel peace. That's sat, that's God. And so you
mm.
run away from the things that do not bring you peace and you run towards the things that do bring you peace. And so that's what I love about it, because it's so like, why should I feel guilty that I'm leaving a situation or something that doesn't feel good?
Mm.
It's like it doesn't feel fulfilling or peaceful or whatever, and I'm just going to go towards this other thing. So yeah, I've been using that as a touch point. How is this pulling me or pushing me? And it's been really interesting to watch it all unfold and to see. um I can just see so much more. Like, yeah, okay, I get it, this is totally pushing me towards God. The all of last year pushed me towards God. I saw all this stuff and I was just like, no, I'm not doing that. And so I got deeper and deeper into my own spirituality. And yeah, so God always wins.
Yeah. That's I really enjoy how our conversations, like, you start with something. It's like, oh, that's right where I'm at too. It's exactly what I've been experiencing in a completely different context. It's funny though, just because when you said pulling or pushing, my thought was, oh, pulling is like yanking you along against your resistance, and pushing is like the wind behind your back, like guide you, like supporting you. But it's either way. You
Either
can look at
way.
it. Yeah. It's like the point is that one is supportive and one is working against your resistance, I guess. But um Yeah. So we've been, well, so my mom's here visiting, and she got here the other night. So yesterday was her first full day. And, my daughter super, super loves grandma, so attached to her. And, um, but she has just these mega emotions and really big, intense energy. And I haven't really known like how to work with it or help her work with it or anything. And
Your daughter or your mom?
my daughter.
Okay.
Yeah. And I realized, so this morning, we just had this sort of like what felt like this crazy fluke explosion, like intense episode. And I mean, I guess we've been coming against something up against some things like pretty much since Mercury retrograde began, because for her that tends to just be, I don't know where Mercury is in her chart. I don't know anything about it. I just know that for those few weeks of Mercury retrograde, things get really intense around here. And so it was really intense, and I felt like we sort of worked through it, but then it totally escalated this morning. But this whole process of working with it, and working with her, because I'm, shifting how I'm working with energy. And it's been sort of coming to that same understanding, because I've had a lot of really intense energy and high emotions and a lot of frustration for years. And for a long time, I felt like it was like this intense, I have to get this out of my body. I have to like work out really intense or like hit a pillow or something, something where it's like matching that level of intensity. And I've tried that with her. Like, do you want to hit a pillow? Do you want to like move this energy out? Um, and it has never worked. And so what I have been doing with myself, and that what I've been doing with her, is just completely like 180ing the situation and saying, oh, we're actually just going to go over here now, and we're going to just totally de-escalate, and we're going to get like lovey and have it just be like happy and peaceful and good, and like we can just walk away. We don't actually have to feel bad, because what I've been realizing with her is that, like, I've been checking in with her. I'm saying, did you like how you felt when you were feeling like that? Or like, if she gets like antagonistic with me, I'm like, does this feel good inside of you? And she always says no. And so I mean, it's hard. She's 5, so I can't like really reason with her, but I'm just trying to get in there and say like, okay, so you didn't like how that felt, and I want to help you feel better, and we can feel better right now, and recognizing that like it doesn't have to be this fight against, it can just be like, oh no, we'll just go where the water flows. Like we'll just make it easy, and we'll just choose to right now to walk away from that intensity and to just embrace the peace that's available right now, or the love or the connection. Like, I'm here with you right now. We can both open our hearts and connect. And it's funny because I was listening to this episode of the Lifestylist podcast, Luke Story's podcast, and he was just talking about this. He and his fiance, they were talking about it, and like how it just, I don't know, like how you don't have to lean into the fight. And they were saying, like within the relationship, that he's like, I'm just going to stay open. And like when she's upset, he's just like, come here. He's not like engaging in that fight, because you just don't have to. But they were talking about how people will say that's a spiritual bypass, because you're like walking away from that, whole thing, like walking away from the anger, walking away, and you're not. Like, it takes tremendous amounts of effort and conscious intention and energy to like have a 5-year-old screaming in your face, and you're like, we can just be happy right now. Like, we can actually just choose to connect inside of ourselves and to let this emotion go and to feel better. And like, it's super hard for her because she so feels it. But, and I mean, it's hard for me too. I'm working on it. I feel it too. But yeah, it's really not a spiritual bypass.
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, that's the thing that I learned from Donna Maria, which I never really bought into the spiritual bypass thing, but Donna Maria made it really clear to me that there's no such thing as spiritual bypass, because if you are a spiritual person, it just doesn't exist. Because if you're a spiritual person, then you can see that we are reincarnating over and over and over, and you're going to deal with the problem at some point,
Yeah.
this life or the next or whatever. Even in this life, like, you reap what you sow, you're going to deal with it. So there's no such thing as spiritual bypassing. And the people who say that don't know anything about spirituality. Like, they're just shallow, saying it from like this shallow level, like they're not looking deeper. And yeah, that whole thing of like, it takes so much love and compassion to soften in those moments. Like, it is so hard. And I've been dealing with that with my daughter, because something that happened on the trip that has happened a couple times since then is she got this thing happening to her that, like, she's like in this thing that I don't really understand because it's new, but it's just like, all I can say is that she's a different person. Like, she gets convicted that she's going to get her way, like this, just the blinding, like, you can see her go blind, and she's just going to do this thing to get what she wants. And I was not really expecting that when we were on the trip. Like, I'd never experienced it with her before. And so I didn't really know what to do. And I just started getting harder and harder on her. Like, no, we're not going to do that. Da, da, da. And what I realized is I was actually closing myself off to her. And what she actually needed was me to hug her. So then I finally realized that on like day 2 or 3 of this happening. And so I just like decided I was going to hold her for the whole day. And I just told Sam, like, we're just going to cuddle her and hold her all day. It changed everything. And then since we've been here, it's happened twice. And she needs more right now, which is kind of hard to believe, because she always needs so much from me that I just feel like I can never give her enough. But right now it's this whole new thing that she needs. And a couple of days ago, we got into this thing where she just was, getting in this way, and I just basically shut her out. And I could feel myself getting harder and harder and harder, like my heart just turning into this rock. And I just like laid on the couch and covered my head up, and I was like, I'm just going to completely ignore her. It just made it worse and worse and worse. And so finally, when I decided, like, this isn't what needs to happen, what needs to happen is I need to like hug her, we need to cuddle, whatever. Whenever I decided to do that, it still took me like 20 or 30 minutes to actually do it, because I was so hard at that point that I just had to really work on. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to let it go. And especially as stubborn as I can be. And, but yeah, it makes everything better when you can just, go the other way. Like, don't even deal with it. And I listened to another talk yesterday, and the woman was saying the same thing, basically, of, if you don't want to see evil in the world, don't look at it. It only exists because you say it exists. Like, all of this is a dream, and the only reality is God's reality. Like, there's one single absolutely reality, and that's God. And unless you're there, everything else is fake. It's all a dream. And that's really, I mean, that's hard for a lot of people, I think, to understand. It's even sometimes, it's hard for me, even at this point. I'm just at the beginning of being able to understand that, because we're so in the body, in the ego, but it's all just an illusion. So you can just choose to not be part of it, and it's perfectly acceptable. And it's actually probably good for the whole world if you choose that, because somebody's got to hold it down over here in positive land, like in the world of love and compassion, like somebody's got to hold it down, because the scales are tipping, it seems.
Well, I've been, if you look at like, Eckhart Tolle, I don't know how you say his name, but I've been reading The Power of Now, and I've been doing all these Joe Dispenza meditations and doing his work and stuff. I highly recommend checking out both of them for anyone listening. But so there's this whole thing about power in that work. And what I've been seeing or coming back to is seeing how, like, in those, they're power struggles, right? Between us and our daughters, and in, how many millions of situations in our lives, it's power struggles. And it actually, like, what was really hard for me to come to for a really long time was that when I choose to open my heart and stay connected and stay present with my daughter when she's pushing every button I have, is that I'm basically like, I'm in control center, right? Like, or whatever it's called, like command center, whatever. And I have like the master button to push to turn all my other buttons off.
It's like the red lever in a nuclear power plant.
Yeah. So I'm actually like in major command of my power. If I'm just like, actually, I'm not going to be triggered by any of those things right now. And I'm just going to ignore all of it. And I'm going to focus on you right here in your little heart right there that's hurting right now. And you just choose, you just choose to drown out everything. And the thing, like doing the Joe Dispenza meditations, what it's really helping me see is, it's the Buddhist meditation, right? It's like the levels of, sensory deprivation and this arriving at this state inside of yourself. And when I was like doing that, like thinking of myself as like doing Buddhist meditation years ago, I was like, how do I draw in my senses? Like, how do I stop paying attention to everything? Like, how do I make this happen? Right. But I didn't get it. I was going about it all wrong. But seeing now that it's like, no, it's about, you are drawing over and over. You're drawing your awareness into yourself. And the more your inner world becomes real, the less real the outer world appears. And so the less affecting it is, the less triggering it is, less stimulating it is. And so you can just like quiet down. It's like when if you've ever had those headphones that are like sound muting headphones. Yeah. And you put them on. It's like that moment when you're like, and suddenly everything is muffled and you're like, yeah. And that's what happens, And so you're calling all of your power back into yourself. And the important thing about it that I want to connect with Eckhart Tolle is that, like, the whole pain body aspect of this is that when you are putting your attention and you're putting your energy into the fight with that person, you are actually feeding the pain body. And if you're paying attention to evil in the world, and if you're paying attention, and if you're looking for all of that low vibration stuff, you're feeding it by giving it your attention. Because as lots of people say, and Joe Dispenza says this a lot, where your attention goes, your energy goes. And so you're literally giving it energy, and it's your powerful energy that could be brought inside of you and then used to completely transform yourself and your life, and then have a vibratory effect out so that you're affecting everybody else with your open heart, which is like all you can do, but it's like the most powerful thing you can do.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. It is interesting how we're always in the same place. I'm totally connecting on that and going a different way to do it. There's a million roads home, but, yeah, that whole cutting off of the senses thing, it has always been a challenge for me. And, I'm naturally like a wiggly person. I'm an itchy person. I'm a, very easily agitated person. And yeah, so I've been meditating a lot, like twice a day, every day since January. And it's so interesting to see how I'm actually capable of doing it when you have the right tools, when you have the right meditation, when you have when you just have the right tools, it's so possible. And it makes everything else better. My whole day is better. I'm so much nicer to my family all day. And man, I've been cooking like crazy. Yesterday was a whole day of making this bomb ass food. Like I just did so good. I made sourdough pretzels this morning, and sourdough bagels this morning, and they were awesome. Like, I'm a terrible baker. I'm absolutely horrible at it. Nothing ever turns out. Half the time my food doesn't turn out, but everything has been turning out so great. And it's because I'm able to give like my full attention to doing that. And every time I get in that place where the cooking is good, I'm like, all right, something's happening here. Like I'm up leveling when the cooking gets really good. I know I'm up leveling.
An expression too, like you're cooking.
Yeah. Yeah. Cooking for sure. So
you're on fire.
Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to bring up that I've been thinking a lot about is, the Star of Bethlehem, because, you know, we were really talking about that. And like, I was thinking about it a lot before the solstice happened. And, you know, Carol Cummins, for anyone who doesn't know her, she's an astrologist,
Yeah.
whatever the word is.
Astrologer.
And she talked in like last summer about the Star of Bethlehem and like this great conjunction. And she said, you know, this is like the star that was happening when Jesus of Nazareth was born. Maybe we'll see an avatar, like who knows what's going to happen. Obviously in the spiritual world, you know, you don't know. It's easy to get caught up in thinking you're going to like see Jesus walk out of the rock and like walk across water or something, but it's something that happens on a spiritual level, right? Like I knew it wasn't going to be something that was going to happen in the physical, but I kind of forgot about it after whatever. And something I've been noticing is the Christ consciousness waking up in so many people and in myself and in my family. And like my brother just called me a couple of days ago and he just was like, I need some resources for I don't know what you call it, like self-help or something. I just need to make some changes in my life and I need help. And like, that's pretty huge. And,
Wow.
you know, just my mom, things have been changing with her. And so I've been noticing it with a lot of people. My sister-in-law was like telling me she's thinking about starting to go to church. And like, she's like, if they had like a witch church, I would totally go to it. But like, so she's on that thing,
Yeah.
you know? And so I'm just seeing this happen. And it finally just dawned on me, like after my sister-in-law said that, I was like, oh, this is it. This is the Christ. This is Christ. This is the return of Christ, the Christ consciousness, because, you know, Christ isn't Jesus. Christ was the consciousness that Jesus had. And so, yeah, this whole return of the Christos consciousness and just watching that unfold in my little world around me, I know that it has to be happening on such a larger scale. And I just, it excites me and it just brings me so much joy to know that this vibration is rippling through everybody at whatever level that they're on. And, you know, I told you, was at the beginning of like last year, that I had gone out and was like praying out by this water. And I was like asking for help for the world, for everything that was happening. And the response that came back to me was, help is already here. And that's, it makes me think about that. Like, this is the thing, right? It's just this energy that's rippling through that we're all being touched by.
Yeah.
And we can't help but transform. And it's so exciting.
Yeah. That's there has been so I have like friends who are talking about the Star of Bethlehem and like all the great changes that are supposed to be happening and like how we should all be feeling like all this amazing energy. And I literally just like hit rock bottom, like right as the solstice was coming. And then like for the next couple of weeks, it was just shit. It was complete shit. And I was like, did I do did I miss the boat here? Like, was I supposed to be doing something that I didn't do in order to like get on this bandwagon? And fortunately it's been interesting because what's happened is I figured out some things and then I just like, it was like some fire got lit up my butt and I've been, it sucked. It sucked so much because I have done so much work, like worked so hard for so long, you know, that whole thing. But I really was like committed and dedicated and just doing everything that I could to like get myself out of the pit of hell that I had created for myself. And I really made so much progress and felt like, you know, I'm doing it. I'm doing the thing. Finally, like I'm on the path. I can see it, but it felt really tenuous, you know? And then this happened where I just like crashed. And I think like as hard as it was and as much as I was like beating myself up and just feeling so bad about it, it really was a critical piece of this whole thing because it facilitated, it was like, oh shit, I'm not out of the woods yet. And I can't let myself get back here again. Like it was like a big, like, remember, this is how bad it really was. And you weren't here. Like you had actually dug yourself out a lot but this is where you can go. So don't come back here. Like, here's one final reminder.
Yeah.
Get out. You know?
And
it was great. Cause like I had this series of things, like somebody sent me a link. It's just these beautiful flowy synchronicity things, like talking to my friend about it. And she's like, well, here's this astrologer that, has a kind of different take and you might appreciate. And this woman was talking about heart coherence. And I was like, oh, okay, I can create heart coherence. Like, that's where to start. Good. And then that, YouTube video linked directly over, like the next one that queued up was this Joe Dispenza interview. And it was like, he was talking about heart coherence, the whole thing. And I was like, Joe Dispenza. And I just like obsessively watched Joe Dispenza for, I don't know, that was like, I don't know how long ago that was. I've been in this like time warp of like Joe Dispenza talks and meditation. I've been like binge watching and binge meditating on all this stuff. And it's like, it's amazing. And it is totally like, I feel like I'm just like it feels like somebody was describing the experience of hang gliding and catching the thermal waves, and it's like when if you don't catch it right, it just spits you out and you're like trashed. But if you catch it, it just carries you and you just go, and it's like totally effortless. And it feels like just this amazing blissful experience. Right. So what it feels like is that happened. Like that first astrologer YouTube video I watched was like me catching the thermal, and then it just carried me. And I was like, I'm riding this. And I just wrote it. And really, there has been this whole time, like, I'm just doing this and I'm riding this because I'm just going to ride this wave. And the more I ride it, the more in it I am. Like the more in the flow I get, the more powerful I feel, the more invigorating it is, so that I keep going and I keep like adjusting to stay in the thermal, right? I'm like, okay, that didn't work. That kind of sucked. I'm going to go back here. And like you get to the edges and you're like, no, I'm going back to the middle, it just like keeps funneling you in and feeding you into it. But it really, there has been this sense of like, I'm being carried by something. Like I didn't say this sucks and I really need to figure out what to do. And I got to try to figure out how to get out of this. I mean, I was doing that, but like, nothing was happening, right? I was still just kind of in the shit. And then I caught this thermal and it just carried me. And I'm like, whew, this is great. I'm just going to like, let this take me and carry me. And so like what you're saying makes me think of that it felt like there was this massive energy shift that just suddenly infused me and like infused my life. And it sounds like I'm not alone that happened.
Yeah. It seems incredibly easy to me for the first time, since I was a kid, it seems incredibly easy to me to get into that current and to stay in that current. I totally get what you're saying, because for me, like meditation as an example, I've been doing yoga for 25 years or something, and meditating off and on. And it has never been easy for me to meditate. Now I wake up in the morning at like 5 a.m, excited to meditate. And before I go to bed at night, I'm excited to meditate. Like I'm so excited to just like be in the joy of God and to like be in that energy. And it's so much easier right now to stay in it, I feel like. And for anybody who wants to make changes in their life, I feel like now's the time, now's the time to ride the wave, this incoming energy. And, that could be for the next few years but just start now.
Forever.
Forever.
Just be forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like what we were talking about initially about, what our energy is and what we're feeding into. And if we're looking at evil and all that stuff, like this, if this isn't reinforcement for directing and I keep hitting my microphone, for directing and channeling your energy and the power of what that does. Like I got carried by the collective uptake of Christ consciousness. I don't know, but like clearly this powerful supportive energy outside of myself has been massively supporting me, into my own growth, evolution, healing, and ability to then, produce that same effect for others. Because like if I lift myself up, I can lift you up. And if you lift yourself up, then you can lift others up. And it's like just goes and goes and goes. And
Yep.
so, whether like if there is massive amount of evil in the world right now, which, based on all that stuff that we were all looking at in the last year, it seems like there has been, like you don't, like what Einstein said, you don't solve the problem at the same level that it was created, right? So like you can eradicate it by literally just making it, like dissolving it, like not like the pain body, right? Like the pain body disappears if you don't feed it. And so you just create that world, literally, like we're all talking about, create that world that you want to live in. And if we all put our energy into that, then that is what exists.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the thing too, a big thing that I learned last year was, if you're resisting something or saying, even if you're not participating, like actively involved in something, like I'm not a human trafficker, but if I look at human trafficking and oh my God, somebody's got to stop it. Oh my God, like those poor kids. And I just think about how sad it is and that go down that whole rabbit hole, then I am feeding it energy because, the thing to remember is that the darkness or the evil, whatever people want to call it, Satan, this negative polarity feeds on fear. So when you have the fear and the anxiety and all these things, it feeds it. And a good example of this is, I'm going to talk about the Winter of the Witch again.
I know, I was just thinking of the bear.
But when we did that, when you and I went through that experience where, for me, I was reading that book and I was, it was like vampires and all this weird stuff. And it brought up all of the images that I have seen my whole life of darkness and of evil beings, what I thought was evil or ghosts or whatever, just being afraid of them, not knowing what they even were. And because she had the courage to look at them, I was able to have the courage. And with the help from my teacher, like I was able to look at those things. And when I looked at these dark, scary beings that I thought were entities that were alive in the world and they were here to attack me, when I looked at them, I realized, well, what happened is they transformed into children and then they just melted away and they became completely benign. And so what I realized is that these things that we consider ghosts or demons or our own, the things that haunt us actually are part of our individual psyches. And so those things were part of mine. And whenever I actually looked at them, they went away, and I don't experience those things. And like last night I had this thing where I was thinking about this. And so it started, like I started to see the images because I was thinking about it and bringing them up. And I just was like, no. And instead of getting afraid like I would have before, I was like, I'm just not doing this anymore. Like, I don't care if, these things exist outside of me and I'm supposed to be a ghost whisperer. I'm just not doing it. Like, I'm just not going to do it. It's not what I want to do with my life. And so, poof, be gone. And it just was totally, nothing. Right. And it's the same thing with these things that happen in the visible world, evil things that we see. And Morgan Freeman said this about racism. He has this quote where he said the only way to end racism is to stop talking about it. And it's along that same thread that these things exist because we give them power. And this new book in our book club that we're reading, it's called Gods of Jade and Shadow. They talk about this, that the demon, or he's a god in this one. He talks about this. He says, like, careful not to name things, because when you name something, you give it life and you make it grow. And we have this in kind of like the new age culture, at least in the beginning, it was all about like naming your feelings and like giving space to these things. And I'm not, that maybe is part of the process, but now as it turns out, acknowledging that you're having a feeling and then letting it go is fine, but you don't actually have to say it out loud. And like you were talking about with your daughter, teaching her, like how, do we need to like yell or like punch something or whatever? In my own experience, whenever I've participated in that, which has been most of my life, like letting the anger out, it actually has made the anger grow. And so it's like, yeah, it's just all these things are becoming so much clearer to me, and not just in like a heady sense, but like I'm actually experiencing the opposite. So when I'm not feeding them, I'm experiencing them dissolve and fade away. Same thing with, like with my anger, when I'm experiencing it, and then saying, no, we're not going to do that, I experience it dissolve away. And it's just such an interesting and totally different way of being in the world. And one that I think I'm hoping that more and more people are going to grasp. But I know for myself, it's taken me 38 years to even understand that's how it works.
Yeah. The piece about, you know, when you look at it and not giving it, like the piece about not giving it your attention while looking at it, you know, if you name it and that actually puts energy on it, like it's making me think about compassion, because one of the questions that has come up for me in this process is what is compassion? Like, I get it conceptually what compassion is, but then like in the real time, you know, like how does it actually play out, and how does it feel to, like, I guess where is the line of like how much you come forward to meet wherever that person is, because you, what is it to mean to stay totally open and to hold the space for that without engaging in it in any way whatsoever, and not you know, like the person that you describe who's, you know, the child trafficker, like if or sees child trafficking, and it's like, oh my God, this is so horrible, and really then I can just feel it and visualize it, how you're literally taking it on and taking it in. And what I've realized with my daughter is that is what I've been doing, that is what has been happening, and why it's so hard, because that energy gets entrenched inside of me, and then I can't see her. I really need to stop talking with my hands because I keep hitting my microphone. I can't see her for who she is as a person to then love and have compassion for. All I see is this, like, it's like this attack, it's this invasion of me. And then because it gets all mixed up and entangled with my energy, then it's like I have to do something about it. And then it's like this kind of addictive, negative, toxic loop that I get in, or have gotten in the past. And I am currently breaking that pattern. So I'm kind of, I guess, I've been questioning that the last maybe week about how do I like support in this situation, hold the space, have abundant love and compassion, and just completely disconnect basically from like any of the, like, the bombs that she's trying to drop or the slings that she's slinging, you know. And there's this this thing that when I was living in Montreal years ago, my housemate was like, oh, you got to check this thing out on YouTube. And so it's in French, and it's this French Canadian. So I don't know how many of you will be able to understand it or watch it or benefit from it, but it was about these little like matchstick men that you draw, and it's yourself, and you pick this other person, whoever it is that you're having these struggles with. And then you draw yourselves, these little stick figures, and then you draw like a squiggly circle around the outside. You maybe do two as like your energy of light, right? And so what you're doing is you're encircling each person in light, completely in their own light. And then you draw lines from all of your 7 chakras connecting to their 7 chakras. And then you offer this blessing, and you like say, and I wish the best for this person, and that they may be encircled in this light, and for me as well. And then you take scissors and you cut the paper in half, and you cut all of those ties. And so for the last week, that's what I've been doing, like in my mind, when I see us getting entangled, and I see she just it's like she has these like tethers in me, and she's like pulling. It feels like she's tugging at me, you know, and I'm like, I don't want to feel like this. And so I just visualize it. I'm like, no, I'm just cutting that one, cutting that one, cutting that one, cutting that one, you know. And it is amazing that the act of doing that actually creates in my body this, like, I'm now encased in my own energy, and she's out there and she's having her own experience, and I don't have to be triggered. It's like, this is my command central, right? Like I'm doing the red button, the red lever, and I'm shutting down the whole system. And, but yeah, I don't know. So it's compassion just seems like this central piece of all of it, because you can't be engaged giving it your energy, but what does it feel like to really hold all of it, and to see it because I guess there's this piece where it feels like you have to look at it, or it is there. You can't not see it. So, if it's like right in front of you or whatever, like, so how do we navigate that? Because I don't know, people are in the world, people are reading the news. They're coming up against stuff like that piece.
Yeah. Like human trafficking is a real thing in people's lives, right? In this plane of existence. Like it's happening to people. It's not like by me just not seeing it, it doesn't exist anywhere, right? If other people are seeing it or whatever. But, I don't know. The compassion thing has been a tough one for me because I don't feel like I understood it. And I have understood it at all. And it's been something I've been working on for a long time. And where I'm at now with it is that, one, I understand, from what I understand, and this seems to be true based on my experience, is that you can't be compassionate to somebody. Like you can't just say, I'm going to be compassionate. Like compassion is a state of being that you can be in, but like you don't just, like for I mean, people can do it, like monks. I'm sure they can will themselves to be compassionate, but like for the average Joe or Joanne, you can't just be compassionate. So and then the second part of this is that I think that really ultimately what compassion is being centered in yourself, AKA God, like being totally centered in that God energy. And that's where you sit and you don't leave it ever. And that's how you can be compassionate. Right. And it's not like how you said, how do we hold all of this stuff? That's, then you can't hold it if that's how it is. Like you're not supposed to hold it. Right. But there is, obviously there's so many subtleties here and there's nuance, but, I just don't think that we're supposed to hold that stuff, that you're just supposed to be there in that centered energy, and that alone is enough to completely shift the whole world. I mean, this is what gurus do when they walk into a room and they light the whole room up, and the entire room, you just feel peaceful sitting at their feet, which is why so many people are like, I will kiss your feet, like they don't care because they get it, they get that all they have to do is sit at the feet of this enlightened person and it just spills over because their cup is full. And so I think that, as far as I can tell, compassion is something like that, just being centered in that energy and never, ever leaving it.
That makes so much sense. And it's like, I don't know. So I read all these Neil Donald Walsh Conversations with God books, and there's this part where he talks about how there are, in other realms, dimensions, spaces, wherever they are, these, highly evolved beings. And he sort of, God lists out like, well, here are the 14 things that you can start implementing in your life that are things that, indicators of a highly evolved being. And it's like a kind of like a chicken and an egg thing, where you become a highly evolved being by being a highly evolved being.
Yeah.
But you can't make yourself into a highly evolved being. You can only be a highly evolved being.
Right.
Like you can't become compassionate. You can be compassionate, but that the process of becoming compassionate is the process of being compassionate. It's like you can't, like Yoda, right? Like there is no try, there is only do. Like you can only actually do something, and it either you do it or you don't. But this like wishy-washy thing is actually just an energy suck. What I've realized is like I have all of this. I mean, this whole year that I was in the mystery school last year, the whole thing was like, you don't need to do more. Like we are learning the way to be in our divine feminine, which is a state of being. It's not a state of doing.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I'm trying, but I'm working so hard and I'm doing all of these practices and I'm putting all of this energy into it, and it's this like, it's a loop of, it's not half-assedness, but it's like, it's a loop of, like, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. 'Cause you're like, I'm going to be the person who tries really hard by trying really hard. And so then I'm going to be the person who tries really hard, and I put in effort and I work really hard at things. So you can't say that I don't work hard at things. But the thing is, I'm not being what I'm trying to be because I'm trying to be it. And so I can't just be it, because being requires no trying, no effort.
That's perfect.
Energy.
That's perfect. Yeah. Like, you're trying to be it, so you become the person who's trying to be it. Like, that's it. Like, that's, I think that it's Lao Tzu says, or something in the Tao that says, the sage does nothing yet, or the sage does nothing yet leaves nothing undone, or something, which is basically like, don't do anything and everything's going to get done for you. And it's like, what? How does that happen? But I mean, that's kind of the magic of it, right? Like, just, I don't know. I think about that saying all the time. I still don't quite get it, but it's along that same line of, you can just become it. You're just it. Like, you're it or you're not. You're either in or you're out. I don't know.
There's that traditional medicinals, the tea company. You know, they have like 6. I mean, okay, if
change the quotes.
I know. If anybody who works for that company is listening, like, I love the ones you have, and if you could just add a few more, because each time I'd like a little bit of something new. But that one, like, nature never hurries and yet everything is accomplished. Like, that's my version of that I think of a lot.
Yeah. The birds aren't sitting outside being all stressed out. Like, I was thinking about, the whole thing with like 5G when it was all happening or whatever, I was all freaked out. And then I just decided I was going to become more powerful than 5G. And I, like, constantly, when if I'm driving or if I'm outside or wherever I'm at, I look at these lines. I look at the electric lines. I look at these towers, and I look and see the birds sitting on them. And I always watch those birds, because I'm like, those birds don't give a squat about 5G. They're just there living. Like, they don't care, like, it's just, the birds are not all anxious about all of this stuff. Like, the animals are just living. And I don't think that the animals are even sad that some of them are becoming extinct. Like, that's for us to be sad about that. But it's just, nature is just happening for sure. So something that you were talking about made me think about these highly evolved beings or whatever. So I have been listening to talks with Elon Musk, and I always thought that I was going to hate him. I didn't know about him until like 8 years ago or 6 years ago or something. A friend of mine, like, I think it was whenever Donald Trump got elected, a friend of mine was like, oh, freaking Elon Musk, like, da, da, da. And so the way she talked about him, I just assumed he was like a white supremacist and I was going to hate him or whatever, right? And I was a totally different person back then, and thought I was going to hate him. Well, fast forward to now, I got interested in his girlfriend's music. Her name is Grimes, and she just does these bizarre and amazing really visually stunning videos. And so I've been into watching her music videos, which got me interested in, like, listening to what he had to say, because I've watched interviews with her and she's totally a weirdo. Like, she's just totally out, like, not connected to her. She does not meditate. Like, you can tell she's just like all over the place. And so I was like, well, what kind of guy is with a girl like this? Like, if he's now the richest man in the world, like, what's he like? So I have been listening to interviews with him, which he's all about. He wants to colonize space. And, I'm totally not going to space, man. I am not leaving this planet. That's just all there is to it. And so it freaks me out a little bit. And, but I've been curious, like, trying to see, like, does he even believe in God? Like, why does he want to go to space? What's the whole deal? And it's been interesting listening to him talk, because once again, I'm finding my perspective shifted and seeing that he just thinks that's like where we're supposed to go as human beings. Like, there's this space and let's colonize it. Da, 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 da. He's really just practical and logical. It's very interesting. Anyway, so that got me thinking about aliens, because somebody asked him if he believed in aliens, and he said no. And I thought that was so fascinating because he's like doing all this space stuff, you know, and he's like, no, we put out pings all the time. We never get anything back. And he said, I'll tell you this, if I need some real concrete real concrete evidence that aliens exist, like they need to stand in front of me. And he said, we haven't gotten he said, or even a video that somebody takes that's like with a camera that's better than like, you know, an iPhone 1 or something, you know, like an iPhone 1 or better camera, because all the visuals are all messed up, you know, in all the videos. And so I thought that was really interesting, but it started making me think a lot about aliens again. And just the study that I'm doing and the spiritual study that I'm doing, and thinking about like what God actually is. And I just wonder if they're actually, if it's kind of like the ghosts that we were talking about earlier, if these are just those are like the ghosts of some people's imaginations, right? Like these are the people who are the full disclosure and they contact aliens and all that stuff. Like if that's just their version of other beings that actually are part of their own psyche, or do they exist too? And do they have the same God, or do they have another God? And if there's only one God, you know, there's just so many questions.
Yeah.
There's just so many questions about this. And I'm so curious about this because I feel like maybe it's just all part of our psyche. And when I was in Florida, I had this whole thing. I was looking at the sun, which everybody says you're not supposed to stare at the sun, but I stare at the sun all the time and I love it. And I have perfect 20/20 vision. So whatever, people can say whatever they want about that. But I was staring at the sun and it's this glowing gold orb. And I'm thinking like, that's the solar plexus chakra, right? I'm thinking that's where God lives. Like everybody's so attracted to the sun, that the sun must be like the energy of God. And like, or maybe there's like a door in the back of it and there's like a man standing in there, you know, like who knows? Because, you know, Paramahansa Yogananda says that God is both personal and impersonal. So it's this big, great big energy, but also God comes to us in whatever form that we wish to see. So for people who worship or believe in Jesus Christ, he comes to them as Jesus Christ. For people who worship goddesses, he comes to them in goddesses, he or she, whatever you want. I'm saying he because I'm reading a lot of scriptures and it talks about he all the time. But so God comes to you in whatever form that you can conceptualize. So is it the same way with aliens? Like these aliens are coming and talking to people and telling them stuff that's very spiritual. Are they that's just how God's getting to you, is through the body of an alien? And if we're a dream, if my body doesn't actually exist and this is all a dream, then that could be completely plausible that the aliens, their bodies don't exist and they're just a dream, their God coming to you. I don't know. Does this make any sense? I'm like,
totally. No, yeah. It's funny because whenever I hear about people's near-death experiences, I think about aliens because they always describe, you know, like the experience of, like, I'm just thinking the most recent one where the guy like saw, you know, he almost died and then his wife and his baby died. And he like saw them on the other side and was able to connect with them. But yeah. And I'm like, but it's this, you know, this white space, feeling all this love. Are there aliens? Do they experience this? Are we all part of the same thing? You know, like, it's just, I think I reached a point maybe, I don't know, somewhere in my spiritual exploration process where aliens became like a hang up for me around God. And like, it was like I had expanded to a point where I was like, okay, I can conceive of all this. I got the near-death experiences, people connecting to past lives and, you know, all these timelines and all, like, I was able to like grasp all of that. And then I got to aliens and I was like, I don't know where they fit. Who the hell are these things? You know, like I couldn't put it didn't fit anywhere. I couldn't put it together. And like, I know people who see aliens. Like I have a friend who she and her mom, it's like, these aliens, like wherever house they move to, they follow them and they like show up, and she's described these experiences. And it's like, it's hard to not.
Yeah. I have a friend who totally told me like she is an alien. Like she came from this family of blue avians and like that's her lineage or whatever. And
Oh wow.
you know, I mean, like, yeah, these people aren't crazy. Like we know them and love them and they're not out of their mind. So yeah, where does it fit?
Well, so Neil Donald Walsh the, God is being portrayed through those conversations, talks about how, because he asked God about aliens, and um he's like wanting, I don't remember, he's wanting to know if they exist or whatever. But so God's talking about, there are different, like different incarnations of energy, I guess. And there's these, different, like, why, I don't know, like there's different realms, different planets, maybe different spaces where different kinds of beings exist. And some are more highly evolved and some are less highly evolved. Because he was also asking about, if people, like, are there things that are going to harm us? Like, are there energies that are out to do us harm? It's like, well, of course, if there's more highly evolved beings, there are less highly evolved beings. And, and so then if you think about it in that context, given that we've discussed and you've just talked about today that, this experience with these, what you might deem less highly evolved being, like denser energies, low vibrations, seemingly scary, whatever that is, like maybe those are your lower vibration parts of yourself that you need to look at to heal and release. And so by the same token, maybe these aliens or highly evolved beings are just like the future version of yourself, and maybe not in this incarnation, but maybe, incarnations ahead of you or whatever. But then we come into the fact that there's actually only now, and like every timeline exists simultaneously. And so maybe those are just your, like maybe that is you 100,000 lifetimes from now, but is actually also happening right at this exact same moment because there's only now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
In the book Autobiography of a Yogi, I highly recommend that anybody who wants to get a clearer picture of about what I'm going to say to read that book, because I know I'm going to butcher it. But Paramahansa, his guru, who is Sri Yukteswar, physically dies, and comes back to talk to Paramahansa. And Paramahansa asks him, what does it look like out there? Like, where are you at? And what does it look like on the other side after we die? Like, what do you see? And so Sri Yukteswar goes through and tells very vivid details about what it looks like. So I really encourage people to go read that, because it's pretty interesting, a little bit terrifying, but he, just from like a vastness perspective, like terrifying because it's so vast. But he basically says that there are these different levels of existence. So where he's at is that he has passed on from this world, and now he's in this second realm where the spirits go. When people die, they basically go into this other realm, and they kind of have like a vacation with God and like bask in the glory of God for a while before they're reincarnated. And that's where he's at right now, helping these spirits. He's not going to reincarnate again, but he's helping these souls to kind of know what the trajectory is when they come here, and like help them before they reincarnate, so that when they come back through, that they're on the fast track to success, So he's like there helping them. But he says beyond that space, there's this other space, which is where people like Jesus live. Like, these people they live in, like, let's call this the palace, like the big fancy house where like they don't got to do shit. They're just living there, and they can choose to come back and forth, or they can stay there, and they're never going to reincarnate again. They're just but they can embody other people on the earth. They can basically go wherever they want. They can embody other people, or they can talk to people, they can manifest in front of people, whatever, but they're living in this place. And then there's like other realms he talks about, and I don't really remember those because I was mostly just interested in those two, but there's all these other realms that he talks about where people go. And it's kind of, it kind of reminds me of like some space movie, like, I don't know, I have a visual of one that I'm thinking of, but I can't. Is it maybe Total Recall, or one of the ones that Arnold Schwarzenegger's in, where there's like a woman with 3 boobs, and I don't remember. It's this weird space movie, and there's like all these different realms. But basically all these space movies is like, you go to this planet, and this planet has this particular atmosphere and these kind of people, and then you go to this planet and it's got these kind of people. So it kind of seemed like that, only it wasn't about planets, it was about like energetic space. And he said the only way that that you're coming up against another soul in these spaces is because nobody's embodied. The only way that you're coming up against them is because you feel a change in energy. So it's like if you were floating and you just like, I imagine this is what like the deep ocean feels like, total blackness. Cause he says that there's no light. There's just all these different like colors, kind of like the aurora borealis, it sounds like. And that like the way that you know that you've encountered another soul is that you're just like bumping into them energetically and they impact your energy and so on and whatever. Totally freaks me out. I mean, thinking about that we're just all kind of ether out there, it really made me think like maybe I do just want to keep reincarnating. I don't know if I want to do that, but sounds interesting nonetheless. And yeah, so maybe there is like a space where people can, that they can, maybe you get to a certain level of this or a certain space in this whatever outer space here looking place, and you can embody as certain figures, beings, or whatever. Like we all come in as humans and we all have basically the same bodies, like we all pretty much look similar, definitely don't look like aliens. So maybe there's a place where like people manifest as aliens. I don't know. It's so heady to think about. But yeah, there's a lot we don't know. When I read that, I was like, wow, okay. That was super intense for my brain to even think about that. And then, he doesn't go into like, are there other universes where the same thing is multiplying over and over and over? And, like,
well, it's the one grounding piece that came in while you were talking about that was that, sort of the process of the human evolution, spiritually speaking, or I mean, in any way, but what is not spiritual, is that like it's Joe Dispenza talks about this too, but in the context of like what, attracting into your life different experiences and being, basically like being just a badass, powerful manifester. But is that you can only experience what is in resonance with your energy. And so like you can't, even if you have like the love of your life walk by, if you're like down in the dumps, like you may not even see that person, but I think it was making me think about that when you're talking, because if you're, a human with whatever conceptual framework you have and whatever experiences you have, and like whatever is outside of that like bubble of experience and thought and emotion and energy is the unknown. And so our gut reaction is fear. And so it's like, okay, right. I was describing about, like I reached that point where I was like, okay, I can deal with the past lives. I can deal with the future lives. I can deal with the reincarnation. And I'm like on board with all these things. And then like the aliens came in and I was like, I can deal with it. I'm down. Like it makes sense. I know people have seen aliens. Like I get it, but I just don't, that's like too much for me to piece that piece of puzzle into this puzzle right now. Cause my puzzle looks complete, like maybe there's a couple missing pieces, but like, this is the puzzle that I can build right now. It's got like 75 pieces, it's like, or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not quite at the jigsaw level yet. I'm not fully ready to deal with there being like realms outside of realms outside of realms. And I just start feeling smaller and smaller and smaller and more scared because like, am I just going to disappear into the unknown? Right. So what I end up trying to do when I get to that point, because it's like, it has to be a process of expansion, right? Like we are contained in these bodies in a way. And so we have sort of like a contained experience. And so our souls, spirits, whatever, that are much more expansive than this, it's like a process of like getting our body and getting our minds on board and aligned with our soul and allowing for that expansion. And I've had a hard time with kind of going beyond certain realms of like possibility for a long time. But what I keep coming back to is like, I just need to know that it really is all love, and that like when I die, like I will actually feel that because as a human, I don't currently know what that feeling is. And I know that I now know, which is so like, okay, I'm super into the Joe Dispenza work right now. I'm going to keep bringing it up, but it is just like so transformative and so helpful for me. It's just so where I am right now. But that, you know, the people are having these mystical experiences by working with these meditations and are tapping into an experience where they actually feel that feeling. Like you don't have to have a near-death experience in order to connect with that, to come back and then know like, oh, okay, like I'm held, I'm loved, like this infinite amount of love is there for me, you know? So like that it's really important to me to know that that's a possible experience in this plane. So like that will, I guess my sense is that having that experience in this realm is massively calming, because you know that like that is the greater truth of reality. And so you can surrender more and release more, knowing that you are actually held in this unconditional and massive amount of love. Yeah. But what I really struggle with, I don't know, this is another piece of it for me, is struggling like for a while, like after I got onto the past lives thing, like I feel like I've sort of resolved this to an extent now, but I really had a hard time with the fact that it's like, I don't care that I had past lives, and I don't care that I'll reincarnate again, because my like finite experience of Corinne in this lifetime has no memory of it. So it might as well not exist. Like,
Right.
I want to be the soul that like can see and remember everything, so that I know that I am eternal, you know. But now I'm learning through, you know, my work that it's just a process, and that it is possible to know that you don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be getting images and remembering your past lives and all that stuff. Like you can have really connected experiences where you experience that, and then you know who you really are. And it's not about how many incarnations you have or who you were, but it's just knowing who your like overarching true self is.
Yeah. I mean, all of that stuff, knowing your past lives and where you've been and all that, is only valuable or helpful so much as it's helpful in your life right now. Like if it helps you to
Yeah.
see a past life, if it helps you feel more empowered or more like confident or whatever, then cool. If it makes you feel like you've got powers, like great. Like that, just keep doing that, because that's the whole thing. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, working with these lessons with Paramahansa Yogananda, the big thing is that's been interesting to me is because I am a person who has really vivid dreams. You know, I'm like most women, I can like talk non-verbally, like I can send people messages, stuff like that. And so those are pretty cool powers to have, right? Like it's pretty fun to have really vivid dreams and like get messages in your dreams. But what he says is, you know, don't get caught up in these earthly powers, because they are nothing compared to your true power. Like when you are in your God power, like when you are connected to God and you let your will be God's will, or let God's will be your will, and let God's desires be your desires, then like all that stuff is totally nothing. So he's like, it's fun, it's cool, as you spiritually evolve, you get to experience these things, you know, like levitating or whatever, you know, that people get to, like you get to experience that, and that's all fun. But like don't get caught up in that, because it's nothing compared to like the greater power that we can tap into. And I've been thinking about that a lot, because and since I've started thinking about that, I haven't really been having very vivid dreams until last night. I had like the most, it was totally like nothing happened in the dream, but it was really detailed. And it was really ornate and very detailed. And so that was pretty interesting. But another thing too is that I learned when I was in Florida was this same talk. He was saying that, you know, some people like our reincarnations, we have all these different lives, and if it's all leading back to God, if it's all pushing or pulling us towards God, and then why do some people have a harder life and some people have an easier life? And a lot of people, when they talk about karma, like to say things like karma's a bitch, or like, you know, like you what goes around comes around. And it's kind of like this like shaming, like demeaning kind of way of talking about karma when there's not really any kind of, there's no emotions attached to it. Just you reap what you sow, whatever seeds you put in the ground, that's what's going to grow. And so something that I learned in that talk also was that some people, so if somebody has a harder life, for example, so I'll use my grandma as an example. She has has had a really hard life, and she's just pretty chill about the whole thing. But I'm like, I can't even believe that you've lived this life and that you're still living this life and you're 75 years old. And she's just like, whatever. But some people choose to kind of take the fast track to burning up karmas. So they come into this life and have a super hard life and experience really difficult things because they have a lot of stuff to work through. And so you got to get through. And I know you and I can both relate to this too. Like we feel like there's so much work we got to do in this lifetime because we're doing like generations worth of work. And then some people don't choose that. Some souls don't choose that, and they choose to come through and do things a little slower or whatever. It just depends on how many lives each soul decides that they want to live, and whatever, where they're at in the evolution. And I always think about this all the time. I've said this for a long time, and given what I just said, then this might not be true anymore, but I've said for a long time that I just want to like get in and get out. Like when this life is done, I don't care if I have to live to be 150 years old. I just want to be done with this place. Like I don't want to come back here and like go through the whole like teenage angst thing and like do the whole thing again. I just want to like learn what I'm supposed to learn. So maybe that's just my soul like trajectory. Like I just want to burn up a lot of karma and get a lot out of the way. Or maybe it's that I want to burn it up now, and so whenever I'm an elderly woman, I can just like hang back and like be a wise old granny or something, whatever. There's so many ways, but it was so helpful to think about that maybe, and we talk about this all the time, like our children choosing to come through to us and all this stuff or whatever. And maybe, it's just more of that we choose to come here and take on a lot of challenges so that we can get back to God quicker, right? So we don't have to keep going around and around the merry-go-round and like waiting to jump off. Like we can just be done with it and step off the merry-go-round and get back to God and like live in that palace forever.
Yeah, I resonate with that. I've definitely had that feeling too. Like this life has just been so hard in so many ways. Like nobody, and it's one of those lives where anybody from the outside would be like, what are you talking about? Your life is like super easy. And it is, on a material plane, it is easy, but in like all these other ways, it's just felt like life is like I definitely went through a long period of time where I felt like life was just pain. Like what is the point of this? Like this entire, everything hurts. That was a big thing that came up all throughout last year. Like I would clear a lot of stuff and start feeling better. And then I would get knocked down again and just be back in that place of like, literally every single thing hurts. Mm-hmm. And I have had that thought of like, this is just so much suffering and so much pain. Like I just want to like do it and be done. Like, I don't want to have to keep doing this. Like, what is the point?
Yeah.
But I think, the thing about doing it though, is that like now I'm in this place of what I actually desire most is, I've always wanted to be free, but now I understand what it means.
Yeah. Right.
And I actually like, all I want is to be free. And my freeness means letting go of all of that suffering and just like emotional freedom. Like Judith Orloff, who I know we talked about a couple of years ago or last year, I did a workshop with her, like 7 or 8 years ago at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And the book that she wrote, Emotional Freedom, was so fundamental for me at that time to be able to actually arrive at emotional freedom. And I did for a period of time. And it's like that whole experience is really coming back to me now and saying, oh, I've had this experience. I have gotten here, and I do know that it's possible. And now it's cool because in these Joe Dispenza meditations, it's like, who are you being? Like, who are you creating? And, you know, consciously choose who you're going to be, and don't live your life from your memories of your past. But I'm like, this is so cool because I actually have this little window of like a few months full of the right kind of memories of who I do actually want to be. And so I can actually draw from those experiences, and I can embody those experiences because I actually know how they felt because I have experienced it before. So it's really cool because it's like, I feel like I had all these genes that I turned on then, and then they got really activated, and then they went dormant again. And so now I'm in this process of like, this is so cool. Like, I don't actually have to start from the bottom. Like, I don't have to start from ground zero. Like, I can just turn on these genes again so much faster. I mean, probably also because of what we were talking about earlier, but it feels like I've already laid a foundation for this work in myself. And so I'm turning these things on and then remembering what it feels like. I'm like, oh, like I had this meditation last night where it's the tuning into new potentials meditation that he does. And as I was tuning into the new potential, I experienced, you know, it was about my eyes. It's always about my eyes. And I was like, so I've been protecting myself with these blue blocking glasses, which you'll see me wearing if we ever release this as a video. And I've been, you know, the last year I got like super crazy about it, like amber lights and blue blocking glasses. And I did all this stuff, but it was like too much. And I didn't, you know, talk about energy and where you're putting your energy, right? Like what I was telling my eyes and telling myself was, I am not safe. The outside world is dangerous. Lights are dangerous. And I need to protect myself. I need to protect my eyes. I need to put on glasses.
Wow.
And so of course I need to put on glasses. Right. So, and then I remembered, like, my memory like flashed back like 20 years. And I was doing this theater production as like a 11-year-old or something. So more than 20 years, and for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to like wear these fake glasses as part of my costume. And so they were just clear lenses, but I was really like, I don't want to wear them a lot because I don't want to mess up my eyes. And I never wore sunglasses, and I always didn't like putting on glasses. I didn't like looking through things because I could just feel how it was bad for my eyes.
Yeah.
And so I was like, remember that person, because I knew then that my eyes were perfect. And I didn't want to do anything that they didn't need protection. They didn't need to be looking through anything. And so I was just like pulling on that. And I came to this place of really feeling I am already whole. Like I don't have to protect myself from anything. I don't have to fix anything. My eyes are not broken. Like I don't need glasses. Like my eyes are perfect as they are. They are whole. I am whole. And it was just this super powerful feeling. I totally can't remember why I started talking about that.
Well, it makes me think the same thing happens. Like I know you and I have both gone down that rabbit hole with food, and the same thing happens with like food, how you're like, oh, like you see so many people now, like I can't eat that because it'll make me sick for weeks. Like I can't do that. I mean, I've totally been there, and you know, maybe there's some truth to that or maybe not, because you know, what I'm seeing now based on my own healing experience, just a little bit of background, like I've had a lot of physical pain in my life, and now I'm getting finally another breakthrough of healing just through mind power and like mind medicine. And so, you know, the truth is that if we're aligned in the energy of God, then we are perfect and whole. It's the ego that's imperfect. So, and it's the ego that's like, don't eat that bread, girl. But like, if we're just living in the energy of God, then the frequency changes to meet us. If we can carry that frequency, then the frequency of a freaking McDonald's hamburger is going to change to be, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm going to ever eat that crap, but it's going to change to be my frequency, right? Instead of letting it overpower me, like you were saying, like the world is attacking your eyes or whatever, like letting all this stuff overpower us is total weakness. And I see that so much, this whole victim culture that we have in society right now. Everybody just wants to be the victim and just looking for a reason. Oh yeah, like I was victimized too. I'm going to jump on this bandwagon, you know? And it's really, it's just not serving anybody. So really you just got to get your frequency up and just ride that wave and not succumb to all that. other stuff that just tries to drag you down. Like if it doesn't make you feel powerful, if it doesn't make you feel like you are God, then get rid of it. Like that's where I'm
Yeah.
at. I'm just like, if something,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess with the exception of like heroin, which only temporarily does that for you. Like I'm not going to go start shooting up, but, like I just want to get to a place where I feel like God all the time. And like, I just have to, be that saying, like the sage does nothing and yet leaves nothing undone. Like I just want to wave my hands and the world just happens as I want it to be. I mean, that's true magic. That's where I want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
There was something else that I was gonna say about that too, and I can't remember what it was now. The whole eyes thing. Well, I was gonna ask you, have they been getting better since
Since I
you've
started
started
that.
changing that?
Well, so that was the meditation last night. I have been doing a little bit of work with them in the meditation, but really that big experience was last night. But it's cool because so one of the things that he talks about, Joe Dispenza talks about is, like for the most part, it's a practice and it's a process, and meditation is becoming familiar with. So it's like this process of becoming familiar with this new version of yourself that you don't yet know really. And so like if you do this meditation and you have this cool experience and then you wake up and you're not healed, like don't throw in the towel. It's not always going to work like that. And most often it's not, because like 99.9% of your other energy still thinks that you're broken. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but it was a really powerful, really awesome experience because I was like really able to feel it and really able to hold it and just like bathe in it to the point that I haven't, well, I maybe tried it this morning. I think I went into it this morning a little bit, but like I have this sense in myself that it's more of an on-demand feeling now than it was before. Like I'm like, oh, I know that experience. And you know what? I actually believe it and I align with it. So I can just do that right now. And like the more that I actively, consciously do that, the more my body will begin to change to resonate with that. And then my eyes will just be like, I will open my eyes one day and be like, look at that bird. I can see all your little details,
Yeah.
Literally a bird, not the derogatory term. I have a bird feeding outside my window.
Yeah.
But like I really feel I came out of that meditation knowing it to be true is the thing. It's like so hard to describe because when you don't know it, you don't know it. But when you know it, you know it. And I suddenly knew it to be true. Like really, really, oh man, it's just like, I feel so
Well,
good.
this is the thing that, back when The Secret, that movie came out, afterwards, everybody was like, oh, well, I can just think whatever I want. It's going to come true. Right. But then there was like this fallout where everybody was just like, that stuff is a bunch of BS, da, 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 da. But now what I'm seeing based on what you're saying with Joe Dispenza, and then based on the teachers that I've been working with, is that there was this missing component, that it's actually about the feeling. Like you can't just think something, you have to actually feel that something. So like what you're saying, like you have to feel like, like it's true, like that's true, that your eyes are better. Right. And so there's that element of it. Like you can't really change something unless you can get to a place where you can feel it. And then the other part of that is that all of these, all of these esoteric teachings that I'm reading, but also in like the Gnostic doctrines of the Bible, in all the Yoga Sutras, they lay out basically the baseline of every religion. There are these rules to live by, and every religion has them. And these are pretty much unanimous across the board, like the 10 Commandments and, the Yoga Sutras, like they all basically say the same thing. Like you have to live as a moral being, you have to, do all these other things. And, that's the promise. If you do these steps, and it's not right now, we're not talking about morality, but we're talking about like embodying the life that you actually want to have. You have to actually do it and continue to do it. You can't just be like, well, I did it for a month and it didn't work. Like the promise is at some point, it's not promised when, you can't say when, but you can, the promise is that if you continue to do it and you never, ever give up, that it will come to you. That's the promise. And so you just keep, you keep doing your eye thing and like doing this visualization, doing whatever exercises, all that stuff. And eventually it is going to happen. And, it's the same thing with everything, like spiritual advancement in general. If you just keep going, you're going to get there. And even if you're on the wrong path, you're going to get there. Like you're going to get, knocked, and eventually all the side paths kind of get knocked away, and the path gets straighter and more detailed, and you can see farther, get to where you're going quicker, but you're always going to get there. That's the promise. And so the other element of that is having faith, which is confident expectation that if you do your part, that this is a loving and friendly universe, and that God is loving and friendly, and that energy is going to meet you. If you come up to meet it, it will come. It's like that picture I was talking about in one of our last podcasts of like the two fingers meeting or whatever, God and whoever it was. And then all the guy had to do was straighten his finger out to touch God. And he's like this close to God. All you have to do is just straighten your finger out, and like God is reaching out there for you. And it's just the same thing with everything. And that's the place where I've gotten stuck most of my life, is just giving up too soon on so many things. Just like, and a lot of it is because I didn't have stamina. And I think that I didn't have stamina because I had lost my direct connection to God. Like I was seeing God in the impersonal form, which is just like the ethers around me in nature, all of this stuff. But I wasn't having a personal relationship with God, which I'm finding is really helpful for me. And it's really been helpful for me actually to use like the term he when speaking about God, and knowing that like God is he and she, God is whatever, God is not that, but it's helpful for me because I'm finding it's actually healing for me, because I had such an aversion to saying that before. So now it's like I'm being able to find comfort in saying that instead of just like the Divine Mother. And so so for me, it's really helpful to have this, to having God having a personal relationship with God, to have that faith element, like confident expectation that I know that there is this force behind me, like that has my back, that as long as I just go, I don't have to have the energy for it. I just need to keep praying, keep doing the work, and just put one foot in front of the other, and it will all everything will get done. The house will get cleaned. The work will get done. Like everything's going to be fine. And it's all going to work out.
Well, it's like what we were talking about before with the, getting there by being. Like you already are there. You already have arrived. If you be it in this moment, you are there. Like there is only this moment. There is only this time. And so like you don't need, the whole thing that Joe Dispenza talks about with the healings that happen. He has all these spontaneous healings that happen at his events. And it's because people get so clear, like for instance, a person who's sick or has some injury or something like it, they get so clear that they are already whole, that they dissociate from whatever need or desire or want they had for this outside change to happen in their body for them to then feel whole. And so then you realize like how much this whole experience, this three-dimensional experience really is just like a shell experience, an illusion or whatever you want to call it. And that like that the now moment is an open field of possibility. And so there is no going to or arriving at or getting there. It's all right here, and it all exists right here. And it's like you're going into your closet and you're like, which outfit am I going to put on today? And if, you select like the whole, I'm whole today, or you can select like, I feel kind of shitty. I feel kind of broken. I don't really like this about myself. It's like, if you just keep selecting that whole outfit, I am whole, then like, you don't need anything to happen because it's already happened. It's already here. It already is because what you want is that experience. So you're already in that experience. And so, so it's like unhooking those ego attachments. It's just like, it's just so funny because what I was talking about, how about you can only assimilate the information, or like you can only, grasp whatever you can get with your current construct of your mental abilities or whatever. And like all of these teachings, like they all say the same thing, like all the teachings that I've been studying forever, they're all saying the same thing. And you're like, oh, right. Like it's the end of suffering. Like, yeah, maybe that's simplistic, but like, the Buddha saying that it's whatever. What is the end of suffering?
I don't know. Stop identifying with suffering.
Right. Like that we just like, the desire is suffering, wanting is suffering, and all these things. But when you're so entrenched in those things, it's like, how can I not want? I need, and like when you are in it, you're in it, and you can't not be in it, even though you can understand it and you can try to force those concepts to like work in your life. It's like perfect example is like thinking that minimalism is the way to live, like it's the right way to live, and like wanting really badly to be able to live minimally and to not care about possessions and to not want things and to like, for me, it was like that. And like, I don't want to be tied down. I felt like my possessions were so heavy and like they were such a burden, and like to not want to be tied down by everything, to want to be free. I'm never going to live in a house again. I'm going to give away all my things. Like I'll never need any of this stuff. Right. Meanwhile, that doesn't happen. I end up, living in houses again. And then I like obsess about the things that I got rid of because I wasn't actually in alignment with getting rid of them. I just felt like that was the best way to be it, because you were supposed to not need things and you're supposed to not want things. It's like, you can't put the cart before the horse, and you have to really just work, that was part of my learning process. But, the teachings aren't, well, I guess maybe the teachings are meant to kind of push your envelope and challenge you. But the whole thing is that if you go about the teachings from a should perspective, you're going to get back a should experience. Whereas if you be the teachings, embody the experience, that's what you will experience. You actually experience the freedom that the teaching brings.
Yeah. Right. Well, and then the whole thing with that, I'm totally there with you on the stuff thing. And where I got to was, it's like, well, I have all this stuff. The real thing is that I'm not attached to it all. Like that every piece of paper that gets thrown away, I'm not freaking out, like we just went through this whole thing because my daughter's little kitchen area was disgusting. It was so messy. There's like rotting stuff in there. I don't even know what was happening in there. And I just avoided looking at it. And then it caused this whole big dramatic thing yesterday because she didn't want to get rid of any of it. And I had to go through this whole talk with her, like, it's just stuff. It's just stuff. It doesn't actually matter. But I was really thinking about that yesterday. Like, it's really the attachment to the stuff that's the problem. It's not all of the stuff, that's like when we find old like archaeological ruins and it's just like a bunch of pottery, people are like, oh, where did they go? People have always produced trash and always produced stuff. The difference was it was pottery, and now we think it's cool when we dig it up. But like people are going to be digging up our plastic and maybe they'll think it's cool. We don't know, but like it's the same stuff. They were just throwing. I learned that when I was in Ecuador. All these indigenous people just like threw their trash out, and I was like, oh, because it's just like, it's like pottery, but then they also had like tons of plastic bags. But I was like, it's the same to them. They don't see this. It's not like waste or not being unkempt or whatever. They're just, this is what they've always done. And that's what we've always done as people. We're not any different. We just throw stuff away. It's just that the stuff is made of things that we don't like the looks of or something. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah. So all the teachings say the same thing. That's the thing. And then the other thing about that too, is that when you get to, it's like when you get to like the esoteric teachings, you think that all these other teachings like spirituality, like level 1, it is like stuff that like Marianne Williamson or like all that stuff, like the Course in Miracles, all that stuff is like level 1. You think that stuff's null and void because you're like, oh, well, all this stuff negates all of that. And in a way it does, but then the whole thing of getting to the esoteric teachings is that it's all true. Like it's all has its place. You're just at this whole other perspective of it, and you're able to see some other components that you could have never seen then. And now you're looking back and you're like, well, that doesn't really make any sense. It doesn't actually go in here. That was a lie. I'm going through this with like the whole meditation thing, because I had 2 people recently ask me about meditation, and I'm like, well, I really don't want to lead you down the path that I went down to get to the meditation that I'm using now, because now I can see that it's all like a waste of time for me, because now I'm at the like this really good way of meditating that's like it for me. But so but I also can't teach them how to do what I'm doing because it's like secret stuff or whatever. So I can't you won't get it if you don't have all this other stuff behind it, right? Like it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going to go with that, but like it's like, I don't know what I'm going to share with them, but it's an interesting place to be at whenever you get to, it's like some point in your spiritual development, you get to where it's not just these little jumps where you can just see things better or you feel better. It's like you get to this bigger part where you see that, well, part of what we're talking about, which is it's all a delusion, it's all a lie, but then also that like there's this whole other level of tools that you can have in your tool belt that just like trump everything else. Like nothing else is even remotely comes close to these upper level teachings, and tools. But then at the same time, you have to have those lower level ones or you're never going to get, like, you can't just jump into the advanced stuff or whatever. And so for me, that's kind of cool to see that I'm at this other level. But also when I look at people who are farther down than me, I'm like, well, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, you're so much farther than me. So there's farther to go, which is also really cool. And right now, what I'm thinking about, what last year really did to me is really made me realize that, you know, with all the socio-political stuff that was happening, I really did this whole 360 around all of it as far as my own personal views or opinions were concerned. Like, I started out in one place and ended up in a totally different place. And what I learned from all of that is that, you know, there's that one, opinions really are like assholes. That everybody has one. They're totally pointless. But also that too, that we can, like, I feel like I've been so many different people that now I can understand that all of those people just aren't the way to be, right? So like the only way to be now for me is to just let God live through me. Like whatever that energy is, let God live through me. And it's kind of funny because when Sam and I first started dating and we were hitchhiking and traveling all the time, he would always get like, people would give him Bibles or like little spiritual scriptures. And he has like this collection of them, and totally didn't grow up in a religious house, not a religious person at all. And I always told him, like, I'm a little bit worried that one day you're just going to become like some crazy Christian. Okay. And the other day he said to me, remember whenever you used to tell me that you were afraid I was going to become a crazy Christian? He's like, that's kind of funny because now you're like talking about God all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I am. But you know, it's just, yeah. So, oh, the people we can be, oh, the places we can go, you know, it's just one big adventure, a choose your own kind of adventure.
Well, I remember when I was in high school, I became really aware of the fact that I was making choices all the time, and that I think I was like really obsessed with the idea of like who I was going to marry without really acknowledging that to myself, which is funny because I still have never married anyone. So I don't know. It's not, you know, like I think I had the thought like you grow up and you get married, you know, before now. But anyway, I just remember like even in middle school, I would stand in line and agonize about like what I was going to eat for lunch because every single choice I made affected every future choice. Because as I saw it, was like, I'm in the middle of a circle and now I see that like I'm in the middle of an infinite, never ending sphere. And it was actually true. I was like super spot on. Like I'm in the middle of this and whatever choice I make creates an entirely new structure of infinite sphere around me. Only then I thought it was like I was in the middle of a circle. So it's like, if I choose to eat Mexican pizza versus eating a bagel and cream cheese, like what is my life going to be, you know? But I started to see like, there's so many choices that I can make. And it's like, how can you possibly choose? Because every choice is like an entirely different life. And so in high school, it was a big thing for me, like the kind of person that I could be. I was like, well, I could be that like angry, like angsty, I don't care what anybody thinks about me kind of person, which I totally embodied for a while, most of high school maybe. But not in the like goth way, but like in the just like, I don't care about anybody kind of way. And then I was like, but I could also just like be really nice, or I could be like the person that I think I'm supposed to be, you know? And I lived this for a long time, like just this confusion that like, it doesn't make any sense. Like none of these things like, how do you choose? Like, why would I be this person over that person? Like, it's just a choice. Like I would see, girls wearing makeup, and like, I had such a thing about makeup when I was in high school, because it was like, this is so weird. You're like putting on a face, you're putting on a mask, like, and everybody knows that you're doing it. And it was like, makeup was just the perfect example of that. Like if you dressed in any other particular way, it was like, it's like, where is that stemming from? Like, it's just this random cognitive choice. Like everybody knows that you're like somebody else, but you're just like putting on this costume or performing in this particular personality or something, And so I hadn't really thought about that, but now from the place I'm in, it's like, I get it now. Like what I didn't get then, but what I was like experiencing it was manifesting in like the limited conceptions that I had at that time, like the limited cognitive framework I had at that time, right? It was manifesting in this particular way. But what it really was getting at was an understanding that there is actually only just me, and that I can perform however I want. I can put on whatever face I want. I can put on whatever clothes I want and create whatever visual persona I want, or auditory persona, like whoever it is that I want to be. I can just be anything, but like, it is all an arbitrary choice, because at the end of the day, there is actually only just me. And that person is very real. And that person naturally expresses herself in a particular way, like naturally is whoever I am, but I just I didn't really know who that was at the time. And I thought it was a bunch of different things, but it's like such a relief and so awesome, because I don't have to choose who, like it's this funny paradox, maybe, like I don't have to choose who I am, because I already am. And yet every day is a conscious choice to be who I am.
Yeah. Which is just equally as challenging sometimes, to just be who you are. That's the thing about all those, like experimenting with all the clothes and stuff, that I really liked, is that, taking on all those personalities, now I can look back and see the one in all of it, like the one person that was actually me in all of that. And so now I actually have a framework, whereas before, when I was doing that, I had no clue what who me was, or like what my soul was, or and I mean, I still have a hard time with clothes, because I feel like there are no clothes on this planet that actually are who I am. And
I get
so,
that.
yeah, it's just like this whole weird thing. And so I just keep getting more and more,
Nudist colony.
like, yeah, I just like, and my clothes just keep getting more, like, I don't like things with pictures or words, or, like as muted as I can be, just like a regular color of like something that's comfortable. And then that's fine. But yeah, I always really admire those people. Like, I don't know if you remember the woman at Shaker Square who she always wore like 70 necklaces, an elderly woman, and she always wore like a huge squash blossom necklace, and she's got these hats, and just like just dragging, and God, she was just a hag. She was a horrible customer, but I always really admired her. Like, I always just admired her like ability to do that every day. Like, you just get up every day and put on all that stuff. It seems like so much effort to me, but she was really invested in it. And obviously that's who she was. I see those people women who do that, and I'm like, that's obviously who you are, because I could never just put on all that stuff and be functional in the world. Like, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I have to pee, and it seems like this is a good time to wrap things up. I think the theme of this show is what you said earlier about Yoda. There is no try.
There's no try, only do.
Only do. Yeah.
I don't even know if that's part of it. There is no try. Try not. There is no try, right? Isn't that what he says?
There you go. You either be or you don't be. That's it.
Yeah.
So then I'll also add that if you are listening to this, make sure to subscribe and to share this podcast with all your friends, and join us for the next conversation between women.